Well, Alyson, thank you for taking the time to talk. I'm a big fan for so long, so it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
I do want to talk about the movie, but first, as Comicbook.com, I would like to geek out a little bit with you, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Ulysses in this movie brings a lot of hope and inspiration and kind of a suspense of disbelief to a lot of people. So I want to know, for you, what was the first character or movie or TV show or maybe even comic book that kind of gave you that feeling in your life, like these things are amazing and can happen and exist?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow. Gosh, I'm trying to think of shows that would have done that for me as a kid. I mean, I absolutely just adored Superman with Christopher Reeve, the original. I would have loved for him to come and like save me from something.
just catch it, fly away.
Just catch me, it's fine. Yeah. So that was probably my first one. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Christopher Reeve Superman is pretty iconic, so I think that's a pretty good answer. Yeah. Have you ever been like, oh, that's a cool Marvel DC for like, I want to do that one day? Or do you think like those projects are like just so crazy and it wouldn't be of interest?
No, I mean, I think that it would be amazing. I do. My husband was in the first Avengers. I mean, not that you would ever know because he was in just pounds and pounds of prosthetic makeup. But I do remember when he was like auditioning for it, it was so secretive and he was so frustrated with the secrecy because, you know, it's like, well, we know Joss and like, you know, but they wouldn't, the sides didn't even have the character name. And so it was like, man number 2 or something. And so we did this whole riff on, no, it's not man, it's mono or something like, and, you know, so we created his own character name for it. But I totally get it. You know, obviously they have to like take every precaution known to man to not like leak it. But it was, you know, he would talk about having to like be draped in blankets and then like led to the set in a golf cart with like sheets just in case somebody was trying to take a picture of his character. So I certainly wouldn't want to do any of that stuff. The press,
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, that sounded really rough.
Yeah, it's an interesting life, I'm sure that everybody in those kind of movies experiences. But it does sound like a lot. Now, I want to talk about Flora and Ulysses because your family in this movie, your character's family in this movie, they have to really welcome a squirrel into the house, which is very unconventional. And as somebody, you have kids, so I'm curious, have you ever experienced something similar where the kids try to bring home a puppy or a squirrel maybe or anything like that? I
wish I would be, I mean, of all of my family members, I'm the most likely to bring home a homeless animal. If it weren't for my husband, I'm sure you would like see me on the news of like, oh, and this woman has 800 like animals in her yard, because I could easily be that, like just go to the pound and get them all. So luckily he like keeps me in check, but we do have a lot of animals because, you know, slowly but surely we kind of like get him to loosen up and let us like adopt another animal.
I can hardly raise one dog. I mean, props for you for even keeping humans, let alone animals, alive. But listen, there is a sequence in the movie. This is a genuine question because I've never been on your end of the interview. So I am curious because there's a sequence in the movie where your character has a very important kind of interview with a journalist. And I'm so curious, is that really how it feels on these days where you're answering these questions and I guess the impression you make does feel very important. Is that kind of realistic?
I mean, I think certainly, yes, in the beginning of my career, I was like terrified by the idea of having to talk to, you know, journalists. But I think now I'm sort of just more used to it. But you know, the last interview, I said something silly and dumb. And that's what I'm going to like be thinking about when I go to bed tonight. I'm like, why would I say that? yeah. So it's not 100% like gone.
Oh, well, I can only imagine when you know with that amount of pressure. But listen, you're awesome. You're so talented. It's a treat to talk with you. And I'm on your side. Maybe not like the journalist in the movie, but I got you whatever I can. So thank you for taking the
Thank
time.
you.
Listen, we have the Infinity Gauntlet here. We have Thanos in the back. We've got all. This is Comicbook.com. All right, guys.
I know we're not messing around here, Matilda. No more messing around. He snaps his fingers and we're dust.
This is where the tough stuff comes at you. So be prepared. But no, listen, Ben, Matilda, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Flora and Ulysses was a ton of fun. But before we talk about the movie, I do want to geek out with you a bit, if that's okay.
Oh my goodness, please.
Okay, so listen, I want all three of us to answer this question because I think it's going to be fun how different all of our answers are going to be. So what is your first memory? Because there are a lot of superhero influences and inspirations in Flora and Ulysses. What's your first memory of like a movie, a TV show, or a comic book in a superhero world that kind of made you have that feeling that Ulysses brings to the world in this movie?
I mean, I'll go first, Matilda, to give you some time to think. I loved Spider-Man when I was a kid. I loved Spider-Man comics. I loved X-Men comics. I loved collecting those Marvel cards. Man, I had all the Marvel cards and all. I mean, of course, we can't get all the foil and hologram ones, but it's like I had them saved and I loved them so much. The toys I played with the most were that Wolverine that you can click out the claws and the Cyclops where you go like this and his eyes light up. So I was creating my own stories with comic book characters, and my comic book shop was called Alternate Realities on Central Avenue in Westchester. And I had my comics, I had my Marvel cards, my basketball cards, and it had Jurassic Park a pinball machine. So I could be there for hours. So, but Spider-Man to me was always, because he was the kid, he was funny and he kicked butt. So I loved Moisha Spider-Man. Tilly, what do you think, Tilly?
Well, I had to think back here, but I've always my dad, he loved like the Spider-Man movies. So I always watched the Spider-Man movies when I was younger. And so I think my first memory of like a superhero, I guess, was the Spider-Man movie. And I got that strong superhero feeling from watching.
Yeah. It's interesting because I mean, I think Spider-Man was really one of my first movies that kind of introduced me to the world of superheroes. So we all have that in common. And also the X-Men movies, because those were right about the time when I was starting to be old enough to go to the movies and really like go by myself and love it. But that
animated series also was enormous for me.
Yes.
The animated series was enormous. And the theme song sounded like a Whitney Houston song that I really liked. So I was really happy for 100 different reasons.
Do you have it in your head? Because we'd love to. Oh my God.
Matilda,
that's my new ringtone. That's my new ringtone right there. Okay. So also there are a ton of comic book references. I mean, and outright comic books featured in Flora and Ulysses. Ben, I know you have a deep knowledge of this stuff. Did you have to school anybody on set on any of that stuff? Because you didn't get to go to the comic book store, but I'm sure the stuff was present throughout.
Yeah, we had one scene, me and Matilda, well, Matilda had many scenes in that store, but we had one scene together near the end of the film. We're all in there. And Lena Khan, who's the director, there's a billion little Easter eggs in there. But my favorite one, well, there's two that I love. One is that in the end, me and Alyson are in the store, and behind Alyson is an issue of Buffy, which I thought was very funny. And then the other one is when they introduce Bobby Moynihan, he's reading a DuckTales comic, which is the cartoon that both him and I are in. Me, him, Danny Pudi, and Kate McCucci are all in DuckTales. So those are the ones I really loved. But Lena Khan is a bigger comic book geek than I am. She was able to put these little Easter eggs all throughout the store that I didn't even understand half the references. And she would go through it and tell me exactly why, which made me very happy.
That's funny. I know Bobby's a huge comic geek like us. I've been at Comic-Con just walking around. I was at an art gallery and I just saw him in there, like just speaking out like the rest of us. I was like, whoa, you're what? But yeah, but Matilda, I want to know, how do you work with, you had the most scenes with Ulysses. You know, what is it like on set? What's really there with you? How do you bring the squirrel to life?
Well, a lot of the time there was nothing there. It was just air that I had to kind of pretend was a squirrel. And sometimes there was like a gray stuffed animal thing that was really creepy. It had no feet, no tail. It looked like a rat. But yeah, I worked with that a lot. But then to kind of prepare me in the beginning, I worked with a real rat and like would hang out with the rat and hold the rat. The rat was pretty cute, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would have been able to keep it together. Yeah, that's very impressive.
She loved that rat.
I did. I was so sad when they said that's the last visit you have with the rat.
And now it's just the imaginary squirrel. Well, you did a great job bringing it to life. It was very convincing.
Thank you.
And to reference another Disney Plus title, Ben, this is for you. Soul just recently came out, and your character George in this movie kind of loses his spark a little bit. And so I imagine as an actor, you kind of might go through similar moments where, you know, you feel that same level of losing your optimism, losing your hope of opportunity and stuff like that. But clearly, you know, it's been fun to follow your career. And I'm happy to say it seems like you're still going like this. What has you ever had that moment? How did you overcome kind of needing to find that spark and get it back the way Ulysses brings it back for the people in this movie?
It's a great question. I love that you bring up Soul. I think Pete Docter is one of the best directors of all time. Up is one of my favorite movies. I'm so inspired by Pixar. There, of course, we live in, or we work in a industry that you're told no 99% of the time. You know what I mean? Like, you can audition for a billion things and you just get one. So you have to get, I mean, if we're getting real, and Matilda is always down for a real conversation. If we're getting real, there's a part of this industry where you have to be, it takes a while to do, but you have to be able to separate your self-worth as a human being versus how you're doing in the career. I'm very fortunate that I'm doing well. But, you know, like when you don't get things, or you're just, you know, you have a couple months off, or you're writing by yourself and it feels very lonely because you're writing by yourself, you have to have the ability to be like, you know, I'm still a good person. I still like, blah, blah, blah. It's not in accordance to exactly what's happening to your career, because in our career, for some reason, they find themselves intertwined. But of course, at the beginning of my career, especially when I failed over and over and over and over again, there was a feeling of like, man, am I doing this? Am I going to be good enough to do this? And then it's just a matter of believing in yourself and having confidence. But I mean, Matilda at 12 is already the star of a Disney movie. She's going to be great. She's doing great.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that feels like to be 12 years old and to be like, how do you, I mean, this year must be so surreal because we can't go near our friends. We're not going to school and stuff. How does everybody in your life kind of react when you get to be a part of this Disney Plus film that everybody's going to be watching, and we all have Disney Plus now. How does that feel to be already on that trajectory right now?
Yeah, it's crazy. I am so excited and blessed and happy that I get to be a part of this, especially now during this time. It's really exciting. It's just another kind of push to, you know, it's really great. I'm so happy. It's crazy.
Well, you deserve it. You're so great in the film.
She's amazing.
I'm curious, did Matilda, did you read the original book, and what did you think of it? And was there anything in there that you were like, I really want to make sure we do this part in the movie?
Yeah, I did read it before in like, I think it was 3rd grade, because like that was a book that we would read over the summer. So yeah, that was, I remember really enjoying that book, definitely. And I think Kate DiCamillo did an amazing job with it. It's such a good book.
That's so wild that you read the book just on your own and then ended up in the movie. That's unbelievable.
And then when I saw the audition come in, I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's turning into a movie.
That is awesome. That is super cool. Well, I'm happy for you. Now, Ben, I do have to ask you a couple of things about a couple of other projects that we are very excited about your involvement in. First of all, Roger Craig Smith says he doesn't want to voice Sonic anymore. And by the way,
let's all for a second, before we even say that, Roger Craig Smith is an absolute legend. Like his VO work, Sonic being one of them, but his career is unbelievable for a VO artist. He's so talented.
I mean, understatement. Like, and I'm glad you point that out because he is amazing. But I'm sure you've been asked this, or you've heard this from your fans. People really like your version of Sonic, and they kind of are willing to see you step into some video game stuff. Or some cartoon stuff? Are you interested in that at all? Have you talked about it?
I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about it. I haven't really thought about it. The first time that's ever come up was because Roger seems to be stepping away. So the first time ever, people are asking me. I wonder, nobody's asked me, between you and I haven't really answered this question yet, but nobody's come up to me and said anything. So my assumption is that who knows, but I wonder. I love the world of Sonic, and I love the fan base. The fan base has been so supportive and lovely. So I don't know. I wonder what would happen. But as of now, nobody's had a conversation with me about any of that. But I do just want to say that, you know, like, of course, that whole, you know, Jaleel, Ryan, all those guys are incredible. But it was incredible to be a part of that legacy, and then to hear that Roger is stepping down, just to say again how amazing he was.
Yeah, and also, I mean, listen, Sonic was the biggest movie of 2020. I mean, you can put whatever you want on that. The fact is, it was the biggest movie of 2020.
Crazy.
So congratulations on that.
Thanks, man.
But like, I mean, of course, that means we're all looking forward to the sequel. So have you heard any updates? You guys know when you're getting started on that stuff?
I know that the sequel's happening, and they're going to start filming soon. But because I'm the voice behind the speaker, I don't know exact dates or anything like that. But I'm excited. I read the script and it's awesome.
Does that mean you're basically the last one to get in there and record stuff?
Sometimes I read for the first one, we did a big table read beforehand. And so we do that, and then I'll record a bunch of my lines beforehand so they can play with it. But I'm the one that sees it on screen, and I get to play with what they've filmed. So I get to really play with that.
That's cool. That's cool. And also, dude, you're doing a Marvel project with MODOK. You're playing George Tarleton's son, Lou. I mean, that's so cool. What's it like to join a Marvel project? And I mean, do they just hit you with enormous levels of secrecy for as soon as you sign on?
Yeah, you get like a special email. They give you your own @Marvel type email address, which is super exciting. And it's crazy. MODOK is like, if you thought about what you would make a comedic show about, the idea that you would pick MODOK is hilarious just from a visual aspect. But it's been super fun. Super fun.
Hey, Lena, how are you?
Good. You have the most amazing background ever.
Thank you. My Flora and Ulysses logo is admittedly a little bit blown out, but I tried.
I saw the effort's really nice.
well, thank you so much. The movie is super fun, and I want to talk all about it. But first, listen, we're Comicbook.com here, so I'd love to geek out with you a bit first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I'm curious. This Ulysses in this movie brings a sense of kind of inspiration and adventure and heroism to all the characters in the film and everybody who's watching it. So I'm asking everybody, what was the first kind of movie or TV or comic book that kind of had a superhero that for you gave you that similar feeling? Like, and it's an experience that you kind of can't forget.
I'm all about X-Men, so that's my wheelhouse. You know, I feel like they're the comic book equivalent of like your big activist, you know, people, your Muhammad Ali and things like that. And so I grew up with them and kind of like seeing something that felt like they were comic book people, but they also felt like they could be in real life, like fighting, you know, their kind of social battles. So that's my wheelhouse.
That's my answer as well. And I remember, I think the X-Men movies are the first kind of comic book movies that I genuinely remember just being excited to go to the theaters for, and the animated series and the comics and everything. Yeah, that's a good one. I see, we're best friends now.
There you go.
And also, I am curious because there are so many comic influences, comic books outright in the movie. Who was the biggest nerd on the set? Who kind of had the most knowledge of all this stuff?
That would actually be my brother.
Really?
My brother is a true blue, real comic book aficionado, and he grew up telling me about everything. I would read some of his comics. He's the one who got me, and like he'd go deep. Like he's not just one of those like. He knows the real story and the psychological battles and real, you know, social implications of everybody. And so that always, I don't know, that resonated big for me. I feel like it's like a real literature source. Like, I think people just think it's all superheroes, but it is just as much as like, you know, there's fairy tales and there's novels and there's comic books. Like they have their own depth.
Yeah. Oh, I fully agree. They make us feel things. They make us think about real important subjects. So I love that. I'm happy you said that. I do love, there was like, you have a Buffy reference and you have Alyson in there. You have DuckTales. Like that stuff is so clever, referencing the things the cast of this movie has done before. How do those kind of get worked in? Are those like in the script? Are those like, you know what, let's just throw this comic in there and make sure it makes the cut? How does that all work?
Oh no, that's just me having too much time on my hands. That's like, okay, Bobby Moynihan's on set, read this comic. Oh my gosh, everybody wait, I have to put this little comic behind Alyson before her shot. Like, oh, Miller, does anybody have a picture of 3 ducks so we can put different collars on them to represent the DuckTales? So it's things like that.
I love that. That just sounds like you're having extra fun with it. And it shows in the movie. It comes through. And it also, like, speaking of DuckTales, you've worked with Danny Pudi before, and he makes his way into this movie. And I'm curious, like, as a director who is, you're still, your trajectory is like this, and I'm sure you're still learning as you go. How important is it to you, and how much more comfortable does it make you feel to have people that you've worked with before? You kind of can, I imagine, build a rhythm and a rapport with them.
It was great. I mean, I knew that I would have no worries when I brought Danny on board. We already had kind of a way to communicate with each other. And I just knew he knows what I'm looking for. I only have to say a couple things and he'll get it. And
yeah.
He did. Yeah.
That's awesome. And of course, I'm going to keep bringing up these references. The William character seems, at least for me, maybe this is wishful thinking. I'm seeing what I want to see. But William feels a lot like a character influenced by Daredevil in some ways. The echolocation of it all, kind of all that stuff. Was that a conscious thought to make sure that you kind of bring the Man Without Fear into that a little bit?
Well, I mean, William is blind in the book, so that credit goes to Kate. But Brad, I think, pulled on some Daredevil for the echolocation, and just because it's so funny. And I would watch it to sort of see some of his like coping mechanisms for how he kind of just got around and see how we could weave that a little in there.
When you mentioned Kate in the book, and the book was so successful itself, and I find it so funny that Matilda read the book before she was even a part of the movie. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
But what is the first kind of step in developing that plan of attack? You have this book, and people always appreciate the original, but you have to make it your own. But you have to honor it. What's kind of the first step to pick and choose what makes it, what gets changed, all that kind of stuff?
I kind of went about it in a different way because Brad was the first one who adapted it. And I read the script and I just loved the script. It's a spec script. And after that, I made a decision to purposely not read the book until post-production, because I wanted to make sure the movie could stand on its own feet. And my producer I knew he would make sure like the central themes and people were honored. And if anything went too far, like he'd tell me. But I just wanted to push things to where it needed to go for the movie. Like there's a shepherdess lamp in the original book. And I was like, no, Jack and Rose is way more Phyllis. And we needed a villain. So Brad added Miller as the villain. And so we kind of stayed true to the original ideas and made sure we had a lot of the original like set pieces, like the donut diner and things like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And bringing Ulysses to life, this squirrel that I've heard was not actually on set. It was kind of just imagination. I'm so curious technically how you did, because I've looked at like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and how James Gunn had like Sean Gunn hobbling around on set. So what did you guys do anything at any point to have like reference or anything like that? Or is this something that you had like your shots selected and then would send it to VFX? How did that all work?
Yeah, I mean, before we did sequences, we would kind of like modestly storyboard them. And some of them you have these like previs animatics that you do. But those are like never as real as when you're like on set. The same way that when you're on set with actors, things change all the time. So they would change. And so I would have a puppet and I would use the puppet to kind of like act out. And we're like, no, you know what? Let's do this in a different way. And that'll make much more sense. And so they have to follow me with the puppet, and then they have to follow the camera move now without the puppet. And then later on, we do like another post-viz mock-up later on where we were staring at nothing a lot of the time. That's pretty much what we did.
What's your favorite part of the process there? Is it the onset, the interaction with people? Is it looking at the final product, the sharing of it?
I love getting pushed to come up with like new things. So when you're on set and you realize that like, God, Ben and Matilda have this crazy collaboration with each other. Like, can we find a situation where they can improv stuff? Mm-hmm. Or is there something else where we can push this in a different direction? I like kind of finding things and sort of pushing it a little bit more. You
almost took me out when you added the "I love you 3000" line, because that scene in itself, I don't want to spoil anything. There's a very emotional scene in the movie that deals with a very personal family issue that a lot of people can relate to. And then there's the "I love you 3000" line. Whose idea was that?
That was, I called my brother and I said, I need something that it feels like they are speaking as two people who their bonding medium is comics, and that they would say to each other in this tender moment. And my brother gave me that line.
I love that. Your brother is the unspoken MVP here. I love it. But I love
I've sold 2 shows with my brother, and he helped. He's my secret weapon.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I thought it sounds like him and I would be best friends.
Yes,
I do love to ask this to everybody. Everybody I talk to all the time. Have you ever conceptualize an idea in your head or just even fantasized a Marvel or DC character who, as a director, you think would be really fun to get your hands on? It sounds like the X-Men would be a lot of fun for you.
X-Men would be a huge thing for me. Anything like in that world. Lately, ever since it came out, Miss Marvel, if that ever makes it to the big screen. I wasn't able to participate in the show because I was in post on this movie at the same time. So as much as I tried, like seeing if we've tried figuring is there a way to like change the schedule around, like it wasn't possible.
Oh, wow. Well, I think, I think there will be other characters and opportunities that come along because you did a great job on Flora and Ulysses, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. And I can't wait to follow your journey and see where you go with it all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.